Welcome, Seeker.
What if I told you that beyond the noise of thought, beyond the shifting tides of emotion, beyond even the self you think you are, there lies a radiant presence, infinite and indivisible, from which all reality flows? A presence so pure that words collapse before it. And yet, for millennia, mystics and philosophers have sought it, naming it simply the One. In the 3rd century of our era, a philosopher named Plotinus gave us a map, a luminous guide that attempted to chart the path from the fragmented world of matter back to this ineffable source. His writings, collected in the Enneads, are not mere philosophy. They are, in truth, an invitation. An invitation to ascend inward, stripping away illusion after illusion, until one stands face to face with the eternal unity from which all being springs. But what does this actually mean? What is union with the One? Is it some lofty, unreachable state reserved only for saints and sages? Or could it be closer than we imagine, hidden in plain sight, woven into the fabric of our daily lives, waiting for us to awaken? In this journey, we will dive into the mysteries of Plotinus Enneads. We will uncover the ancient philosophical roots that inspired him, from Plato to the forgotten wisdom of the East. We will explore the 3 great levels of existence he described, the One, the divine mind, and the soul, and learn how they mirror the structure of our own being. And most importantly, we will see how this vision is not just abstract speculation, but a practical guide, a way to transform the restless human spirit into a vessel of peace, clarity, and illumination. By the end, you will see that union with the One is not a distant dream, but a profound possibility, a path of return, a mystical homecoming. And like all true wisdom, it begins not somewhere out there, but within. To understand Plotinus, we must step into a world where philosophy was not a sterile academic exercise, but a living path of transformation. The 3rd century was a time of great turbulence. The Roman Empire was crumbling, borders were shifting, and uncertainty reigned. Amidst this chaos, seekers hungered for truths deeper than politics or empire, truths that could anchor the soul beyond the storms of history. It is here that Plotinus emerges, a philosopher who lived not merely to argue, but to awaken. Born in Egypt around 204 CE, he traveled to Alexandria, the crossroads of cultures and wisdom. There, in a city where Greek philosophy mingled with Egyptian mysteries, Persian thought, and whispers of Indian teachings, Plotinus found the seeds of his vision. Later, he would journey east with the Roman army, seeking sages of Persia and India, yearning for living knowledge beyond books. His teachings were written down by his student Porphyry and organized into 6 great treatises, the Enneads. These works drew heavily from Plato, especially the idea of a transcendent realm of eternal forms. But Plotinus went further. For Plato, the forms were the highest reality. For Plotinus, behind them, beyond even the purest idea, there was something greater. The ineffable, unthinkable source he called the One. In this, Plotinus stood at a crossroads of ancient thought. The Greeks spoke of a divine order underlying the cosmos. The Egyptians spoke of a primordial unity from which all gods and worlds emerged. The Upanishads of India spoke of Brahman, the absolute reality behind appearances. Plotinus was not copying these traditions, but harmonizing them, weaving them into a system that spoke to the human need for transcendence. Philosophically, the Enneads gave rise to what we now call Neoplatonism, a school of thought that became the bridge between classical philosophy and later mystical traditions, including Christian mysticism, Islamic Sufism, and even the Renaissance magi who sought hidden wisdom in their own time. Without Plotinus, much of Western mysticism might never have taken the shape it did. Yet, what makes him so powerful is not only his synthesis of traditions, but his insistence that philosophy must be lived. To read Plotinus is to be reminded that wisdom is not about winning debates. it is about transforming consciousness. The union with the One was not a metaphor to him. It was the highest human destiny, an experience attainable through purification of the soul, contemplation, and an inner turning toward the eternal light. Still, his vision was also dangerous in its time. The Romang world was increasingly dominated by state religions, and anything that hinted at a truth beyond empire was often met with suspicion. The ineffable One could not be controlled by rituals or priesthoods, and so this wisdom lived more in secret, handed down, rediscovered, and veiled in philosophy so it could survive. This is the context in which Plotinus wrote: a collapsing empire, a hungry age, and a truth too vast to be confined by creed or institution. His words still echo today, calling us to remember the forgotten path of return to unity. At the heart of Plotinus' vision lies a grand architecture of reality, a cosmic hierarchy that reveals both the mystery of existence and the pathway back to its source. He described reality in three primary levels: the One, the Nous, and the Soul. These are not mere concepts, but living realities that shape every layer of being. At the highest point is the One. It is beyond all categories, beyond thought, beyond language. The One is not a god among gods, not a personality, not even being, as we usually understand it. It is pure unity, overflowing with such abundance that all of existence streams forth from it. Plotinus compared it to the sun. It shines not because it chooses to, but because radiance is its very nature. From the One emanates the Nous, or divine intellect. This is the realm of pure forms, the eternal patterns of all that exists, beauty, justice, truth, and every archetype. Here lies the order and intelligibility of the cosmos. To encounter the Nous is to see the underlying harmony of reality, to recognize that all things are reflections of an eternal idea. From the Nous flows the world soul. This is the living bridge between the intelligible and the material worlds. The world soul animates the cosmos, and within it, our individual souls are sparks of its eternal flame. We live in time and matter, yet our essence remains connected to this greater soul. But here lies the dilemma. Our souls, though rooted in eternity, have become entangled in the material world. We are pulled toward multiplicity, distracted by appearances, and weighed down by desires. Anxiety, confusion, and suffering arise when the soul forgets its origin. For Plotinus, the journey of philosophy was nothing less than a process of remembrance, a turning inward and upward, from the chaos of matter back to the order of the Nous, and finally, dissolving into the silent unity of the One. This is why Plotinus insisted that the path to wisdom is not only intellectual, but transformative. To contemplate beauty is not simply to admire it, but to trace it back to its source in the eternal. To pursue virtue is not merely ethical, but a purification of the soul, stripping away all that obscures the inner light. Each act of truth, beauty, and goodness is a step upward, a movement toward union. He described this ascent as a kind of inner flight, the soul rising beyond sensory distractions, beyond restless thought, until it rests in stillness. At the peak of this ascent, words collapse, thoughts dissolve, and duality fades. What remains is the unmediated presence of the One, a moment Plotinus himself claimed to have tasted several times in his life. The first part of his teaching, then, is clear. Existence is not random or meaningless. It flows from a single, infinite source. And our own being, our restless longing, our hunger for meaning, is nothing less than the echo of that source, calling us to return. To grasp the fullness of Plotinus' vision, we must explore not only the cosmic structure of reality, but also the paradoxes hidden within it. For while the One is the source of all things, it is also beyond all things. It is closer to us than our own breath, yet infinitely beyond our reach. How then Can the finite soul unite with what is beyond all definition? Plotinus answers with a radical idea. Union is not achieved by addition, but by subtraction. The one cannot be grasped through more concepts, more rituals, more possessions. It reveals itself when we let go of everything else, our thoughts, our desires, even our sense of self. The ascent is not a climbing upward, but a peeling away, until nothing remains but the pure simplicity of being. Here lies the first great paradox. To know the One, we must go beyond knowledge. To see the One, we must close our eyes to all else. Plotinus called this the flight of the alone to the alone. It is a mystical process in which the soul dissolves its separateness and awakens to its own hidden source. But there is another layer of depth. Many critics of Plotinus asked, if the One is perfect and complete, why does it overflow into multiplicity? Why does it emanate a world filled with struggle, imperfection, and suffering? Plotinus likened it to the sun once again. The sun loses nothing by shining. Its radiance pours forth naturally, giving life to all without diminishing itself. In the same way, the One is untouched by the imperfections of the world. The fractures and shadows we see belong not to the One itself, but to the distance between us and its radiance. This leads to a second paradox. Even the flaws of the world can be seen as part of the divine order. Just as shadows reveal the shape of light, the presence of imperfection awakens us to the longing for perfection. In this way, even suffering becomes a silent teacher, urging the soul to seek its origin. And then comes the most daring claim of all. Union with the One is not merely symbolic, not merely metaphorical. It is a lived, direct experience. Plotinus described it in words that tremble with awe. The soul, stripped of all boundaries, suddenly merges with the infinite, becoming one with that which is beyond being. It is ecstasy in the truest sense, a standing outside oneself, dissolved into the whole. Yet he warned, this union is fleeting, rare, and cannot be forced. It comes only when the soul is ready, when it has been purified through contemplation and virtue. And when it comes, it leaves an indelible mark, a memory of the ineffable that reshapes every aspect of life. Thus, the Enneads do not merely offer abstract metaphysics. They present a roadmap of the soul, a mystical cartography of return. They tell us that within each of us burns a hidden spark of the divine, and that our restless yearning for meaning, beauty, and truth is nothing less than the call of the One, echoing across the silence of eternity. And now, having uncovered the vision, the paradoxes, and the promise of union, we must turn to the question that haunts every seeker. How do we take these teachings from the realm of the mystical into the reality of daily life? And if you wish to keep walking deeper into these mysteries, subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and keep walking together through the doorways of wisdom our ancestors left behind. The journey is only just beginning. Plotinus lived nearly 2,000 years ago, yet his vision of the soul's ascent offers practical wisdom for us today. For while the language of the Enneads is lofty and mystical, its essence can be distilled into practices that transform not just our thoughts, but our daily lives. The first step is contemplation. For Plotinus, contemplation was not passive daydreaming, but an active turning of the soul inward. In a world dominated by noise and distraction, this means deliberately carving out time for silence, closing the door to the outer world so that the inner world can speak. Even a few minutes a day, spent in quiet reflection on beauty, truth, or the nature of being, begins to shift the soul toward alignment with the higher realms. The second step is purification. Plotinus believed that the soul is clouded by desires, attachments, and the constant pull of material things. To move upward, we must lighten the load we carry. This does not mean renouncing the world entirely, but learning to hold it with gentleness rather than grasping. For modern life, this may take the form of mindfulness, learning to eat without greed, to work without becoming consumed, to love without clinging. By purifying our intentions, we gradually free the soul to rise. The third step is the cultivation of beauty. For Plotinus, beauty was not mere decoration. It was a reflection of the divine order. He urged his students to contemplate beautiful art, music, and nature, not for pleasure alone, but as windows to the higher reality they mirror. To gaze at the stars, to lose oneself in music, to marvel at the simplicity of a flower, these are acts of spiritual ascent. They awaken the soul to its own forgotten radiance. The fourth step is the practice of unity. Plotinus insisted that we cannot reach the one while clinging to separation. Every act of kindness, every attempt to see others not as rivals, but as fellow emanations of the same divine source, becomes a sacred exercise. In this sense, compassion and empathy are not merely ethical duties. They are steps toward mystical union. And finally, there is letting go. No matter how disciplined our practice, the last step cannot be forced. Union with the One, Plotinus reminds us, comes as grace. Our role is to prepare the ground, to polish the mirror of the soul, so that when the divine light shines, it is reflected clearly. This requires trust, humility, and patience. When put into practice, these teachings become more than philosophy. They become a path of transformation. Anxiety softens into serenity because we recognize that the soul is never truly separate from its source. Loneliness dissolves into communion because every being is part of the same great emanation. And ordinary life, its joys and its struggles, takes on a new depth, for it is seen as part of the journey of return. Plotinus does not offer us escape from the world, but a way to dwell in it with clarity, depth, and purpose. He whispers across the centuries that the One is already within us, waiting to be uncovered. All we must do is turn inward and allow the soul to remember. And so, as we prepare to conclude, we are left with a question. What happens when a person finally succeeds in awakening to that union? The journey through Plotinus Enneads is not a simple intellectual exercise. It is an invitation, a map for the soul. We began by exploring the origins of his vision, rooted in the mysteries of Plato, yet reaching beyond, toward a reality more profound than words can hold. We traced the path upward, from the material world, through the realm of soul, toward the ultimate source of all being, the ineffable One. Along the way, we discovered that union with the One is not about adding something new, but about uncovering what has always been present. Like the sculptor removing marble to reveal the hidden form, the soul's task is to let go of illusion, attachment, and forgetfulness until its true nature shines through. This vision, though ancient, has never been more relevant. In a time when fragmentation, anxiety, and disconnection seem to define human life, Plotinus offers a reminder of unity. He calls us to see beauty not as ornament, but as a reflection of the divine order. He challenges us to practice compassion, not as a virtue, but as a recognition of our shared essence. And he invites us to contemplation, not as escape, but as remembrance. What lies beyond this journey? Plotinus insists that words fail. The One cannot be explained. It can only be experienced. And when it is, there is no I and it, but only a merging, a union that transcends all boundaries. He tells us that in that moment, the soul does not merely know the divine, it becomes it. And so, we end where Plotinus himself often ended, in silence. For the mystery of the One is not something to be solved, but something to be entered. But before we close, let me leave you with a question. If the source of all existence is already within you, what would it mean to live as though you were never separate from it? If this journey through Plotinus wisdom has stirred something within you, I invite you to share your reflections in the comments. And if you wish to explore more hidden philosophies and timeless truths, consider subscribing to the channel and joining our growing community. Because the quest for the One is not just Plotinus' journey, it is ours.